This program aims to enhance the research competitiveness of emerging African researchers who are working on important challenges for human health. The fellowship is open to research-active postdoctoral scientists and clinicians who are nationals of and employed in sub-Saharan Africa and who were awarded their doctorate after May 2014. Clinicians without a doctorate but who have a research-relevant master's degree and at least 2 and up to 7 years active research experience are also encouraged to apply. Interested applicants are to download and fill the application form and email to fellowship.rf@rf-africa.org.uk before 23rd September 2020. Visit www.africaresearchexcellencefund.org.uk for more information.
Africa Research Excellence Fund, AREF, lance un appel à candidature pour la bourse AREF Research Development 2020. Ce programme vise à améliorer la compétitivité de la recherche des chercheurs africains émergents qui travaillent sur des défis importants pour la santé humaine. La bourse est ouverte aux chercheurs et cliniciens postdoctoraux actifs qui sont ressortissants et employés en Afrique subsaharienne et qui ont obtenu leur doctorat après mai 2014. Cliniciens sans doctorat mais titulaires d'une maîtrise pertinente pour la recherche et au moins 2 et jusqu'à 7 ans d'expérience en recherche active sont également encouragés à postuler. Les candidats intéressés doivent télécharger et remplir le formulaire de candidature et envoyer un courriel à fellowships.rf@africa.org.uk avant le 23 septembre 2020. Visitez www.africaresearchexcellencefund.org.uk pour plus d'informations.
The Africa Higher Education Research Institute, AHERI, is inviting you to register for the AHERI Virtual Conference 2020 on the theme, Innovations in Higher Education, which is scheduled from 5th to 6th October 2020. This conference will serve as a platform to learn from international and regional experts and industry stakeholders discussing the latest developments and issues in the global and regional higher education e-learning ecosystem, and the opportunity to participate with stakeholders from various sectors across Africa and the world in discussion on opportunities for improvement in digital literacy, legislation and governance, online teaching accreditation, infrastructure development and access, as well as funding and business continuity. Expected participants are university VCs, ICT and academic department heads, lecturers, students, higher education research institutions in Africa, education policymakers in multilateral and governmental agencies, as well as professionals and organizations interested in the e-learning industry and higher education. Kindly visit www.aheri.org to register and for more information.
L'Institut africain de recherche sur l'enseignement supérieur ARI vous invite à vous inscrire à la conférence virtuelle ARI 2020 sur le thème Innovation dans l'enseignement supérieur qui est prévue du 5 au 6 octobre 2020. Cette conférence servira de plateforme pour apprendre des experts internationaux et régionaux et des acteurs de l'industrie qui discuteront des derniers développements et des enjeux de l'écosystème mondial et régional de l'enseignement supérieur en ligne. Et l'occasion de participer avec des parties prenantes de divers secteurs à travers l'Afrique et le monde dans des discussions sur les possibilités d'amélioration de la littératie numérique, la législation et la gouvernance d'accréditation de l'enseignement en ligne, le développement et l'accès de l'infrastructure ainsi que le financement de la continuité des activités. Les participants attendus sont les responsables de services, les vice-chanceliers d'universités, les TIC et des universités, des chargés de cours, des étudiants, des établissements de recherche, de l'enseignement supérieur en Afrique, des décideurs en matière d'éducation dans les agences multilatérales et gouvernementales, ainsi que des professionnels et des organisations intéressées par l'industrie de l'enseignement en ligne et de l'enseignement supérieur. Veuillez visiter www.ari.org pour vous inscrire et pour plus d'informations.
That is all for today's update. Event Update is brought to you by the Association of African Universities. Please follow us on our social media platforms at Association of African Universities on Facebook and YouTube, AAU TV _ African Universities on Twitter, and AAU TV Official on Instagram. You can also visit our dedicated website at tv.aau.org for more of events updates. I am Isabella Tatahinakwa.
Je m'appelle Alexandra Hampaba Johnson.
Good day, Africa, and welcome to another exciting edition of AAU Talks here on AAU TV. And my name is Kwesi Sam. Today on AAU Talks, we are privileged to have two seasoned academics, and we are going to discuss alternative forms of financing higher education in Africa. Don't forget that you can get interactive with us via our social media platforms, Association of African Universities on Facebook and AAU _ 67 on Twitter. We'll go for a short break, and when I return, I will let you know my guest, and the show continues. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and you are still watching AAU Talks on AAU TV, and today we are discussing alternative funding sources for African higher education. And like I said before we went for the break, I have two seasoned academics from the University of Professional Studies, Accra, here in Ghana, and they all happen to be in the same department, that is the business school of the university. And once we are discussing alternative forms of funding, I think that is the best department to have academics from, to help us understand the scope and what we need to do to support African higher education. So we are privileged to have Mr. Fred Awa, and he is a senior lecturer at the business school of the University of Professional Studies, and he is also the former Secretary General of All African Student Union, and so he's my boss. You are welcome, Mr. Awa, to AU Talks.
Thank you very much.
Great. And we have the head of department of the School of Business Administration, University for Professional Studies, Accra, and he is in the person of Dr. Emmanuel Salasi Asamoah. Doc, you are welcome to AAU Talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I am so much happy to host you today on this important subject, and I call it important subject because African higher education, or higher education in general, we seem to be struggling with financial issues, because some years ago the government across the continent were sponsoring or were supporting higher education, but now there are equally important areas that are competing with higher education in terms of government funding. Now, for universities to survive, how do you think the universities must be rethinking in financing higher education in Africa? Let me start with Doc. Let me start with you.
All right, thank you very much, Sam. It's indeed exciting to be here. This is my first time here, and I'm quite impressed with what AAU is doing. I think that there's a lot of good job here, and we need to support the initiatives that comes out of this great establishment.
Thank you.
You rightly said that indeed the funds for higher education is dwindling.
Exactly.
And there are so many reasons that accounts for that. First and foremost, we need to establish the kind of good we are dealing with, whether it's a public good or it's a private good. Depending on the nature or the level of development of a country or even a continent, it could either be a public good or a private good.
Okay.
In our part of the world, which is Africa, we can say that education is a public good in the sense that not many of our people are educated. And looking at the level of our development too, there's a need for us to have a certain core educated young people to propel us to where we want to get to. But unfortunately, like you rightly said, the funding has dwindled, so that if we say it's a public good, then the public should support the growth and development of the sector. But that has not happened.
Okay.
And the reasons are not difficult to find. There are competing demands. We have several challenges, infrastructure as an economy as a whole, etc. And this is peculiar to most African countries. So the money is not forthcoming from the side of the government, budget constraints, etc. So then the question arises as to how we forge ahead in terms of funding. It's a big issue. Now, my approach to funding higher education is very simple. First, let's look at what we currently have and how are we using the limited resources at our disposal. Because I believe that if anybody would want to give you money, they would first and foremost want to know the little that you have, how you spend it.
Okay.
And that is very key. Because universities all over Africa, I believe, in spite of the dwindling resources, still have something. Now, the first point of call is to look at the size of your budget, see where you can cut costs, and see where you can add value.
Okay.
Then when something else falls into the pool, you would be able to manage it properly. Now, I don't have figures, but I believe that every university is quite different, and they would be the best to find out areas they can cut costs. It's all about judicious use of resources. So if the little that you have, you're able to really channel it into places that will create value, that would be of essence. Now, if we are able to identify the various cost centers and decide that, oh, this particular cost center is incurring so much cost but is bringing in very little, then we need to pay particular attention to that. And that is very, very key. So that would mean the administrators, the corporate governance structures that exist in the universities would really have to look at those areas to be able to, consolidate the income streams, spend it well so as to be able to attract others. Otherwise, if what you currently have is being misused, then if you put more into it, it's just going to go down the drain and will not be able to get the necessary impact that we actually deserve.
Okay, I'll come back to you and ask you whether you think universities in Africa are misusing funds or they're not using it appropriately. But let me get to you, Mr. Awa. I know you have done some works with Professor Kebukola, who has really done extensive work on financing higher education in Africa. But then do you think education is still the priority of our national or the African government? If it is, then no matter the struggles or the little funds they have, it should be the topmost priority in terms of funding.
Well, to be fair, I want to say that yes, education is a big priority to many African nations. We take, for instance, your country, Ghana. Over 30% of the budgetary allocation goes into the educational sector.
Yeah.
I was also privileged in the year 2009 to be elected representative of the National Union of Ghana Students to the Student Loan Trust Fund.
Okay.
So for a government to set aside a board or a fund represented by different stakeholders, including students, strictly for the purposes of disbursing funds, now it should tell you that governments across the continent are willing to commit further funds on the issue of higher education on the face of the continent. Having said that, there is the need for justification. If we are saying that governments across the continent are making efforts or are making education a priority, what are the benchmarks that point to that?
Okay.
The Student Loan Trust Fund is just one given example. In Ghana, we have the Ghana Educational Trust Fund, which specifically is intended to develop infrastructure across tertiary campuses in Ghana. They actually they derive their strength from Article 38(1) of the 1992 Constitution. That says that all of the 10 regions of Ghana, education infrastructure should be enhanced to ensure that. So that's just one. You go to Nigeria and you have the Tertiary Educational Trust Fund, which is 2% of the gross income of private organizations, together with some supplementary funds from the government of Nigeria. So some efforts are being made by governments across Africa. When you go to Lesotho, there's a replica of the Student Loan Trust Fund where students access loans and pay back when they get jobs. Botswana is no exception.
Namibia as well.
Yeah, but Botswana actually has a finer model. You need to get a grade point of 3.6. And if you do, university education is totally free for you. And for the underprivileged, it is a grade point of, I think, 3.2 or 3.3.
Okay.
And then you go through. So some level of commitments are done by different governments across the continent to ensure that higher education is progressive. Having said that, like my senior colleague said, there are budgetary
constraints.
There are conflicting demands on
competing
demands on the resources of the state. So take, for instance, the instance I gave in Ghana. Of all of the sectors of the economy, government is able to do more than 30% only on education. So the rest of the resources go to the other sectors. So it tells you that there is some level of prioritization for education in Ghana and, for that matter, Africa. So I will want to go with the school of thought that Africa's higher education is a priority to African governments, except that resources, just like elsewhere, have never been enough for financing higher education on the face of the continent.
Okay, so establishing the fact that it is a priority, then we all have the base line that the issue has to do with the competing demand of other sectors. But then how can educational institutions also support the government in sourcing for funding to support their mandates as institutions training the manpower brings of our continent?
Well, at the end of the day, you, the vice chancellor or whoever is in leadership position, would have to find ways of generating more revenue to support what you do. I started on the backdrop that you need to look internally to look at ways where you can really cut down costs, but still continue to create value, because that is also very, very important. We hear of infrastructure deficits, and often when universities talk about infrastructure deficits, they are talking about brick and mortar buildings, which is very, very expensive to put up, and that actually puts a lot of pressure on their finances. But if we look at the trends in development, you would realize that the brick and mortar kind of educational system is gradually phasing out, especially in tertiary institutions. So it presents an opportunity for us. Now, I'm here talking about, ODL, online distance learning platforms, offering education to people all over Africa. There are some universities that does too well with that. I can quickly mention of UNISA. UNISA in South Africa, for instance, has actually improved because of their technology, to the extent that you can sit in Ghana and still pursue programs in UNISA. Yeah. If you go to Europe and other places, that is actually what is changing the face of education. So, and you and I know that it costs so much to put up a building, to accommodate students, which in the next 5 years becomes inadequate. So we need to really look at the sort of allocations we do and our priorities, and also consider the future, what the trends are, and that should help us in channeling resources to the right places. In Ghana and other places, we expect a boom because of free SHS, which is currently with space in the secondary schools. It's going to get worse when all these students hopefully pass,
supposed to get to the tertiary
and they are looking for tertiary education. And it will cost so